Hi there. I'm Sarah Parkinson, and at Penland, you may know me as one of the people who walks around taking photos of workshops and extra nice clouds. I also write newsletters, update the website, and publish stories to our blog and social media as part of Penland's communications and development team. I came to Penland 5 years ago as an enthusiastic, lifelong art dabbler. I'd experimented in printmaking and letterpress, clay, wood, drawing, sewing, surface design. And of course, setting foot on this campus quickly made me want to explore more. I signed up for a blacksmithing class. I tried my hand at glass blowing during one wonderful, humbling week. I learned to pattern garments. All the while, it was less important to me what I was making than that I was making something. My explorations didn't coalesce into anything you might call a coherent studio practice, but it was always more about fun for me anyways. Recently, though, something shifted. For the first time in my life, I'm part of a creative collaboration. It's still about fun, but it's propelled forward by our joint ideas and energy. The project is called Homebody Textiles, and the collaborator is my dearest sister Emily, who I happen to think is the most exceptional person I've ever met. Together, we've been developing a line of naturally dyed and printed textiles, and it's these pieces and our process that I'm really excited to share with you all. Homebody Textiles is built on our love and admiration for one another and our mutual fascination with color, pattern, cloth, and the natural world. The exploration of natural dyes is at the heart of what we're making. Like so many artists before us, we're thrilled by the way a humble leaf might yield rich indigo blues or clear weld yellows. Sure, there are faster, easier, cheaper, more reliable ways to print and dye cloth. But for us, this project is about celebrating the rich history of textiles, our connection to the natural world, and the beauty and intricacies of the natural dye process. You could call it a labor of love. Our design process goes something like this. Settle on a loose vision, sketch a million different possibilities, see which ones speak to us. I think our original guiding words were something like Marimekko meets earth tones meets softened geometry. This scarf here is the very first one we designed. It was inspired by sketches Em made of a rope backpack she created. The repetitive coils of the rope became these wandering, meditative lines. She sketched the original design with black markers, and then we scanned it and tweaked it further. As much as we love digital tools for testing out variations, it's critical to us that everything starts as a drawing so that our shapes maintain the character and idiosyncrasies of a hand-drawn line. For this pattern, what started as stained glass-inspired drawings of arches and diamonds turned into something thoroughly more interesting when I passed them to Em and she started cutting tiles out of my shapes. We used her cut design for this tea towel, and then I took it and rearranged everything to create a napkin pattern that highlights this central tile zigzag. The two together are much like Em and I, obviously related, with many of the same features, different in their personalities, but complementary, a swell pair. From here, I started to get excited about the suggestion of a snaking line of tiles where the arches almost connect. And so the pattern evolved further into these ideas for a two-tone pillow, which we've only started playing with on fabric. Neither of us could have arrived at these results on our own, which makes the entire design process feel a bit like talking to a really great Ouija board. I love it. More recently, the two of us have been learning firsthand what so many Penland artists already know. Establishing a craft business is a creative act in and of itself. In addition to all the designs and colorways and print processes we've been developing, we've also been learning how we want to photograph our products, experimenting with how we want to write about them, and building an online home that feels appropriate. Warm, a bit funny, but also sincere and educational. It's like trying to describe a personality that we ourselves are only starting to get to know. I'm sure all of it will continue to evolve over time, but for now, here are a few moments of this process that felt like fun discoveries or little successes along the way. Obtaining 3 separate colors in one dye pot by printing with different mordants. The fact that we arrived at any designs at all while trying to sort out details over text message. the joy that emerged when we strung some pieces up against a bright, cloudless sky. This goofy photo of my dogs almost falling over that I put on the 404 page of our website. The dye plant tissue and tags that we designed to go with our pieces. The way these ripples and shadows bring life to a flat textile. This not taking ourselves too seriously section of a recent newsletter. Fun fact, I'm wearing Crocs here. And our product shots, which we'd hoped would involve a real photographer and some models who aren't us before the whole stay-at-home order forced us to change those plans. We just recently launched our very first collection on our online store, and seeing all the natural color and pattern and photography and writing come together on that one page felt like our biggest win yet. So to all the incredible plants and centuries of dye wisdom that make it possible, thank you. And to Penland, thank you for introducing us to these materials and connecting us to the people and resources that got us started. To M, my collaborator, thank you for being an ever bright spark. And thanks to all of you for tuning in. We'd love to share more of this adventure with you as it develops. So please sign up for our newsletter at homebodytextiles.com or follow us on Instagram or Facebook if patterns and natural dye nerdery sound like fun. Thanks.
Hi, my name is Lynne Hobaica. I am originally from Phoenix, Arizona, and I moved to the Penland area a little over a year ago and work as the gallery finance coordinator. So I make a lot of pottery. This is a platter that I made that is currently in the Penland Gallery. And these are some cups that I've made. But for this slideshow, I'm going to focus mostly on my sculptural work because I think it better illustrates my ideas and intentions in making art. So I went to grad school at the University of Art and Design in Linz, Austria, and this is a piece that I made while I was there. I accidentally locked myself out of my apartment, and my friend came and tried to pick the lock to get me back in, but it didn't work, so I had to hire a locksmith and pay him €80 to get back in, which was a lot of money then, and probably still is now. But I got back in, and that night I couldn't sleep. I was so mad at my friend for not getting me back into my apartment for free. I was mad at my roommate for studying abroad and not being around, and I was mad at the landlord. And finally realized that it wasn't any of those people's fault. I was the dum-dum who locked herself out of the apartment, and I needed to take ownership of that, so I made myself a trophy. And then I was on a roll, so I made myself trophies for a bunch of the dumb shit I've done. This is one of the examples, and this is from when I accidentally electrocuted my landlord twice. This is another piece that I started while I was in grad school, and it's these are all balloons that were hand sculpted and kind of looks at the idea of celebration and hope. And sometimes you have that and you just really get worn out. This is another piece that I made in grad school, and it was inspired by my family and not being around them. I was so far away that I couldn't come back for pretty big events. I missed my grandfather's funeral and my brother's wedding, and I was feeling a lot of guilt for not being around. And so I made this. It's called "It Would Be Better for Us All If You'd Stayed." And each of these pieces is about 3 feet tall and held up by being bound together by a rubber band. So if any one of them shifts too much or leaves the group, then they would all collapse. After grad school, I moved to upstate New York for a little over a year, and then I went to Seattle. This is the exit show for my 2-year residency at Pottery Northwest. It came together right after a month-long residency in Italy, and a lot of the imagery I used is inspired by the cathedrals that I'd visited while I was there. I grew up going to Catholic school and going to Catholic church at least once a week. And so that imagery has always been present in my life, and seeing so much of it and such a richness of the churches in Italy was really inspiring. The show is called I Will Help You Live Forever, and it sort of looks at the idea that our relationships are what keeps us going. And after we die, telling each other stories is what helps to continue our existence past our deaths. And all of the sculptural pieces were hands, and I still make a lot of hands. And that is sort of thinking about hands being a way that we communicate with each other and how we connect with each other. And I paint images on the hands much the way our wrinkles and scars tell our stories on our own hands. Those images tell stories on these sculptural hands. This is the biggest hand in the show. It's about 4 feet tall, and it was called How Many Times Can You Fall Out of This Tree and Not Die? I'm Still Counting. And it's sort of about the cycle of life and death and creativity and being an artist. This is another piece from that show, and it's sort of inspired by the idea of caring so deeply about a person and wanting to be so close to them that you wish you could burrow into them and nestle inside them, and maybe then you would be as close as you want to be. This was a piece that I've made recently. The glass flowers came from hanging out with a group of glass artists here at Penland, and I've never done glass, so my friend Chris helped make those. And the image on the hand was painted while I was at Pentaculum in Aramont, and we spent the whole week with new friends laughing and joking about foot-long corn dogs and trying to find them. And it wasn't until the last day that we actually managed to find and eat foot-long corn dogs, which isn't totally recommended. But this piece sort of has that gaudy, playful feeling that Gatlinburg embodies. And lastly, I do a lot of collaborations, and this is a collaboration I did with my favorite artist, Ricky Barnett, and it was one of our first collaborations done together. He came to visit me a few years ago in Seattle and made a few figures and left them in my studio, and I decorated them. So he built the form, and I did the clothing. And this is from a photo project that we did together, our road trip from Seattle out to North Carolina. We had a film camera. It was for a project called the Self-Portrait Project, and we had to fill the role with self-portraits. And this was one of the very last ones we made once we had arrived here at our home in North Carolina. So that's it. That is my show. Thank you.